Hi. The final thing we're going to talk about in this module in terms of ethics and best practices and principles when looking at a few variables together when we're building up a plot, talking about relationships, is called confirmation bias. So confirmation bias is very related to statistical significance, practical significance, and correlation and causation. Essentially, confirmation bias is when you already have a belief about what trends are happening and what's causing those trends, and you go out and collect data, analyze data, and report that data in such a way that you confirm what you already believe to be true. Sort of the old you'll see it when you believe it kind of a phenomenon. It's very widespread, very common, and one of your jobs as a data storyteller or a data journalist is going to be to monitor this confirmation bias risk or temptation within yourself, in your audience, and in anyone who's helping you collect data or analyze data or recommending data, because it's a really common kind of human experience. And a really good example of this happened on a research project I was doing in a very small town that was having a youth mental health crisis. And they did not have a large budget, and they needed to figure out how they were going to use their limited resources to try and turn the youth mental health crisis around and establish some healthy quality of life in their young people. So a couple of the nonprofit social service organizations set out to collect data. And we could see that the data that they collected and the results they came back with each reflected what they already believed about the youth mental health crisis. For example, one of the nonprofits was oriented to gender and gender equity. And the data that they collected really showed that the male youth were at much greater risk than the female youth for mental health problems, which is understandable and was absolutely confirmed by the data they collected. A second nonprofit, which was had a racially oriented mandate, collected data that showed that Black youth were much more at risk than white youth to be experiencing mental health problems within this community. And again, very well intentioned, very well meaning, and the data did stand up to say that this trend did exist. This is a statistically significant trend. Then a third part of the municipal government had access to the poverty level of young people in relation to their mental health. So they did an analysis that showed that youth that were not in poverty were at much greater risk than youth who were in poverty of having a mental health crisis. So these are really interesting trends, and they're not, though, helping us see the whole picture, because at this point each one of these organizations is focusing on the thing that they're mandated to focus on, either gender by itself, race by itself, or poverty by itself. So each of these organizations, very well intentioned, well meaning, are producing results and data visualizations and data stories that are simply a confirmation of what they themselves already believe. If we combined all of this data, instead of looking at one variable at a time, then we're broadening our scope. We're looking at it at a much more holistic view, and there's much less support for any one individual confirmation bias. We can actually see that the white males living in poverty in this community were the most at risk, followed quickly by the Black females who were living in poverty. So this is the reverse, not quite reverse, but this is a very different picture than what we could see when we were operating only from confirmation bias. So you need to be really aware of what you already believe strongly is happening and how you can push back on that data as hard as possible. So how you can take data to argue against your confirmation bias. And you can usually do that by things like getting as much data as possible, getting more data, analyzing it in more novel ways, and spending a lot of time visualizing it. Look at it from as many different angles and lenses as possible, so you can see if it's your confirmation bias or if the trend and the story that you're trying to write is really there.